Pierre Omidyar's story begins far from the billion-dollar empire that the world would one day associate with his name, in Paris in 1967, where he was born to Iranian immigrant parents who carried with them a deep belief in the value of education, hard work, and persistence, values that would quietly shape the boy who would one day transform the way humanity buys, sells, and connects online. Yet at the time, his life was ordinary and even uncertain, because soon after his birth, his family made the difficult decision to leave France and move to the United States in search of better opportunities, eventually settling in Washington, D.C., where Pierre grew up as a curious, thoughtful child who quickly developed an unusual fascination with technology. While most children in his neighborhood were content with sports, cartoons, or simple childhood games, Pierre found himself captivated by the possibilities hidden inside machines, tinkering with early computers, scribbling notes about codes, and asking endless questions that sometimes even his teachers struggled to answer. And although this curiosity hinted at future brilliance, it also set him apart in ways that were not always easy. For teachers often assumed he was distracted, classmates teased him for his unusual interests, and there were moments where even he wondered if his passion would ever lead to anything meaningful. Yet despite these doubts, he pressed on, teaching himself programming, experimenting with basic software projects, and slowly nurturing an inner resilience that would prove essential in the years ahead. As Pierre advanced through school, his academic record was respectable but not extraordinary. And while he managed to secure admission to Tufts University, where he pursued a degree in computer science, even there he did not immediately stand out as a prodigy. Instead, blending into the background of students, quietly working through assignments, honing his craft, and struggling with the same doubts that had always accompanied him. For the world outside did not yet recognize his potential, and even he sometimes questioned if his dedication to coding would ever translate into real achievement. And when he graduated in 1988 with his bachelor's degree, the reality of adult life struck hard. Because instead of glamorous opportunities or rapid success, what awaited him were ordinary programming jobs that neither challenged nor inspired him, roles where his skills were underutilized, his contributions overlooked, and his ambitions quietly stifled, leaving him with the constant internal conflict of whether to abandon his passion or to cling to it despite the lack of recognition. These early years in his career were filled with humbling lessons, for Pierre often found himself working on projects that seemed trivial, under managers who neither understood his vision nor encouraged innovation. And although he performed his tasks dutifully, he often left the office each day with a gnawing sense of dissatisfaction, questioning whether the dream he had carried since childhood was slipping away into a lifetime of mediocrity. Yet amid the discouragement, he discovered something priceless: patience, discipline, and the quiet strength that comes from persisting even when nobody is watching, qualities that would later prove critical when his breakthrough finally arrived. But at that time, the struggle seemed endless, and he experienced more than one breaking point. Moments when financial pressures mounted, when freelance projects he attempted collapsed, when ideas he proposed were dismissed, and when the thought of giving up crossed his mind more seriously than ever before. Because there is only so long a person can walk through life believing in a dream that yields no results. And Pierre often felt as though all doors were closing, that the future might hold only more disappointment. Yet it was precisely in one of these moments of uncertainty that the seeds of his greatest idea were planted, though he did not realize it then. For in 1995, while working at General Magic, a company in Silicon Valley that specialized in software development for communication devices, he decided to embark on a small side project. Not as a grand entrepreneurial venture, not as a calculated business plan, but simply as a gesture to help his fiancée trade collectibles online. A modest experiment that he named AuctionWeb. At the time, the idea of people buying and selling personal items through the internet seemed bizarre to many, even laughable, for the internet itself was still in its infancy, doubted by mainstream businesses, mocked by skeptics, and largely ignored as a commercial tool. But Pierre saw something others missed: the possibility of creating a marketplace where ordinary individuals could connect directly, bypassing corporations and institutions. And although his vision was still still vague, he began coding the site with quiet determination, not knowing that he was on the verge of creating one of the most revolutionary platforms in modern history. At first, AuctionWeb was little more than a hobby. Its traffic sparse, its users mostly friends or acquaintances curious to try something new, and Pierre continued working his day job while coding late into the nights, fixing bugs, adjusting the interface, and handling every technical issue by himself. Yet, slowly, something remarkable began to happen. Strangers discovered the platform, began listing items, began bidding, began forming a small but growing community. And for the first time, Pierre felt a glimmer of validation, though even then, success was far from certain, for the site faced endless technical failures, servers crashing under even modest traffic, code errors frustrating early users, and financial struggles that nearly forced him to shut it down. And there were days when he sat staring at his computer, exhausted, overwhelmed, and unsure if the dream was worth the sacrifice. Yet he refused to quit, pouring every ounce of energy into stabilizing the platform, reinvesting every small amount of revenue back into keeping it alive. And slowly, painfully, the site began to grow. Word spread beyond his circle, more users joined, and AuctionWeb evolved from a curiosity into a real marketplace, where people across the country began to buy and sell everything from collectibles to practical goods. And Pierre realized he was no longer running a side project, but nurturing the foundations of a new kind of commerce, one powered not by corporations, but by individuals. And when AuctionWeb rebranded itself as eBay, the transformation accelerated, catapulting Pierre from an obscure programmer to the founder of a rapidly expanding phenomenon. Yet even as success seemed to arrive, new challenges threatened to undo it. For eBay's rapid growth attracted scammers, counterfeiters, and skeptics. Investors questioned its legitimacy, critics doubted its sustainability, and the technical burden of maintaining the platform grew heavier each day. And Pierre, who had once been mocked for his passions, now faced the enormous responsibility of steering a global enterprise, a task that brought sleepless nights, endless crises, and moments of fear that everything he had built might collapse. Yet through it all, he drew upon the lessons of his earlier failures, the patience learned from years of unnoticed work, the resilience forged in times of rejection, the discipline cultivated in his darkest hours. And instead of being paralyzed by the magnitude of his problems, he tackled them one by one, building stronger systems, innovating new solutions, and staying faithful to his vision of empowering ordinary people. And the world responded, embracing eBay not merely as a shopping site, but as a community, a place where trust, connection, and commerce merged into something entirely new. And as the platform expanded globally, transforming countless lives by enabling millions of entrepreneurs to start businesses from their living rooms, garages, and small shops, Pierre Omidyar himself was transformed too, from the overlooked boy who once doubted his path into a billionaire and one of the most influential figures in the digital age. Though even at the height of his success, he never measured achievement in wealth alone, for his vision had never been about accumulating fortune, but about impact. And so, having secured his place in history with eBay, he turned his attention toward philanthropy, founding the Omidyar Network, an organization dedicated to investing in education, human rights, and social progress, using the resources he had gained to uplift others, and proving that the truest measure of success lies not in what one accumulates, but in what one contributes. And in this way, Pierre's story came full circle, for the same persistence that once carried him through failure now enabled him to transform success into a force for good, leaving behind a legacy that was not merely technological, but profoundly human, a legacy that continues to inspire dreamers and builders across the globe, who see in his journey the enduring truth that greatness is rarely born from uninterrupted triumph, but from the ability to rise again after failure. And thus, from the boy mocked for his obsession with computers, to the young man trapped in uninspiring jobs, to the struggling programmer nearly crushed by rejection, to the visionary who created one of the most transformative companies of the modern era and then used his success to give back to the world, Pierre Omidyar's journey stands as one of the most extraordinary tales in business history, reminding us that every rejection, every obstacle, and every doubt can serve as the very foundation upon which revolutions are built.